Welcome to TSK F1. My name's Rich and this is your daily dose of F1 news. Sorry about being a little bit late. I was having a bit of trouble with my green screen. Hopefully it's working all right now and hopefully you've got all my audio and all that good stuff. Let me just have a look. Yes, it looks like you're getting it. Good morning, everyone. This morning we're going to be talking about Lando Norris and something Mika Hakkinen has had to say about him. Fred Vasseur saying that Mercedes will wake up soon. Also, staff changes at Ferrari and McLaren, and then onwards to quotes that have come from Toto Wolff about development and cost caps and Plan B cars. So without further ado, please do make sure you're hitting that like on the video and also subscribing down below if you are new. But first of all, let's get into some news about Mika Hakkinen. Now, I think most people love Mika Hakkinen. I think, you know, back in the day, I wasn't a fan of his, and it wasn't that I hated him or anything, but I was a Schumacher fan. But it was one of those things when he retired. I really respected what the sport had lost. So that's kind of how I am these days. But he's definitely in a position, I think, to critique and also assess other drivers that are current. And interestingly, he's come out and said that he believes Lando Norris is on the same level as two-time world champion Max Verstappen. And he was speaking to Unibet International, and he said, Lando is a very quick driver. He's achieved a lot, or rather, he's shown convincing results consistently. He's super talented, no question about it. He's on the same level as Leclerc, Verstappen, and Sainz. He's on a very high level speed-wise. And then they were talking about McLaren and as a team and things like that. And he says, I don't think McLaren has very high expectations this year. They know their development department and their sponsors and partners are world-class technology giants. McLaren has their support, but the team knows they aren't quite there yet. The result needs a couple of more years. They're in it for the long run and have good partners. Like I said, there might be some results this year, but I think the true performance will be seen in a couple of years. And I would assume that Mika Hakkinen is better connected than a lot of people on knowing that as well. But the interesting part of this story for me is that. Now, do you agree? Let's have a really quick poll. Do you agree with Mika? Yes, no. Do you agree with Mika that Lando Norris is on the same level as Verstappen, Leclerc, and Sainz? It's interesting that he's included Sainz in that level as well, you know, because I think a lot of casual fans wouldn't put Sainz on the level of Leclerc and Verstappen, and I kind of like that he's added Sainz in there, you know, because I think he's really, really good, and he's underappreciated. Antic says, I agree with the Lando comment. I don't agree with the McLaren comments. I think they'll progress, but as will other teams. Now, they will progress, but I suppose it's at what speed, right? It's at what speed they'll progress. Norris is quick, but not Max quick. Well, there you go. You disagree. Cue the Max fans saying no one is on Max's level. Well, you know, I don't think anyone can say that with a straight face, can there? You know, the margins are so fine. But I just thought it was an interesting thing to bring you because Mika Hakkinen, I have no doubt, works with drivers and coaches drivers and things like that. And for him to be so complimentary about Lando Norris, I don't find it surprising, but you know, it's out there, isn't it, now that he's said it, with comparisons to other drivers. I think Merck thought they'd got it by finding pace out their car, but under anticipating what others could do as well. Potentially. But a little bit there. I mean, it was only a tiny little poll, but 70% of you agree with. I'd agree. I think if you give Lando Norris the car, he's as quick as Max Verstappen and Leclerc. He's definitely one of those guys, as is George Russell, and Lewis Hamilton. They're all up there, and it's the fine margins in the cars which are telling the difference. Like Lando Norris isn't like off the back of the grid like we saw in Bahrain slow, is he? You know, it does say 69%. It does say 69%. But there we are. A little initial story. I'd love to know your opinions more on that in the chat. Now, the second story of the day is about... I've got my stories mixed up. Now, seeing as we were just talking about McLaren, this is an interesting one. Sanchez, David Sanchez, I think his name, David Sanchez. Let me just confirm that. Yeah, David Sanchez, I believe a Frenchman, head of Ferrari vehicle concept, resigned yesterday and is going to McLaren after a period of gardening leave. And this actually is a really big loss for Ferrari, because he was behind the last two iterations of this car, which, you know, you have to say have been a decent step. If you look at where they were finishing in the Constructors prior and where they finished in the Constructors last season, they took a step. Despite some unreliability, despite the strategic errors, the car itself took a step. And yeah, I think this is a big loss for Ferrari and a big gain for McLaren. And it's a big sort of scalp to take from Ferrari. And the problem that they've got now is that all of the people in those positions, basically, Ferrari are dealt a double blow here, because not only have they lost their member of staff, if they were to try and recruit from another team, there would be a gardening leave period, you would guess, for probably the remainder of this season, honestly. There would be, so basically this means Ferrari have got to promote internally for this position. So it's a very, very big blow really for Ferrari, because if they went to McLaren, if they went to Mercedes, Aston Martin, Red Bull to try and recruit from there, they're not getting that person until next year. So immediately they have to find someone internally they can promote to this position. Whereas it's a good hire for McLaren, isn't it? Because they've made the sign-in. Yes, the person has to see out their gardening leave, but they've already made the sign-in. They've got the person to come across. I'm not sure how long the gardening leave is, but it would be a long while. It's not going to be like 2 weeks. That it's going to be. I don't have details on it, but Sanchez has been with Ferrari since 2012, and he was actually, what they're sort of saying is he was a key man for Binotto, and he, like, friends, but also he was an ally of Binotto's. And it could also be that kind of situation where the situation's changed for Sanchez and he's decided he doesn't want to be a part of the Ferrari Vasseur situation going forward because he was friends with Binotto. But do you think Ferrari being based in Italy hinders their employment efforts? Maybe. We've heard other people, like actually James Allison, speak about this, that you have to, like... And while I'm an Englishman, I guess it's true for any other country. When you're thinking of going to work for Ferrari, you have to be sure that you want to do it. Like, I seem to recall Allison on about, like, not moving his family or moving his family, and the decision was difficult, where to go and what to do. And while it seems obvious to us, like, let's go work for Ferrari, we're talking about people, if you're English, I mean, obviously Sanchez is French, but if you're in England and you're working for Mercedes and you're of an age where you have kids, it isn't a simple, it's a human choice, isn't it? So maybe it's difficult, because I seem to recall that's why Allison left Ferrari as well. And I don't want to go into another reason why I think he left there, in case I was incorrect about it. But I remember there being something pretty bad within his family. But I don't know. I think to sort of segue on that, we were talking about it yesterday. I think Ferrari's being in Italy hinders them because Italians are, from what I understand, tremendously patriotic. And I think that's their biggest barrier, that it sometimes clouds their judgment on a foreign hire, you know? So I think it's a good question. Do you guys think it hinders them? Now, look, as it said, I'd much rather live in North Italy rather than Milton Keynes, but, you know, it isn't as simple as that when you've got a missus, you've got kids, and the kids are in school and they're doing well, and things like that. I know that's beyond Formula One, but that's the truth, and that's life. It's not as simple as just going to your wife and kids, right, we're off to Italy now. You know, it's a difficult thing to do, isn't it? But anyway, Sanchez to McLaren. I think it's a good hire for McLaren and a big loss for Ferrari. And given that it's head of vehicle, Buzz, a close bereavement. Yeah, and I don't really want to talk about it because from what I've got in my mind, I don't want to get that wrong. If it's who I think it was to James Allison. And if I get that wrong, it's not very nice, even if I'm a tiny YouTube channel. I don't want to get that wrong, you know. I wouldn't want to get that wrong. But it was one of the reasons I think he left Ferrari. That's one of the things we were talking about yesterday, Keith. Stefano Domenicali was saying that Ferrari saying "we are Ferrari, winning is what we do" is nowhere near enough. You actually have to go and win races and win championships, and Ferrari need to start doing that again. But that is a big problem. I think that for Ferrari is a big problem because of their lack. Like, even if they go and hire from outside now, they're not affecting the 2024 car. They're only going to affect the 2025 car because it's vehicle concept, right? So, and you're picking up someone else's concept. So it's a tricky one. It's a tricky one there for Ferrari. Please do make sure you're hitting the like on the stream, guys, and also subscribing down below if you're new to the channel. My name's Rich, and this is TSK F1, where I'm live every Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. with the latest F1 news, as well as smatterings of content throughout the week, and watch-alongs for all the Formula One sessions. So please do get involved, guys. We're an awesome community already, so please do get involved. Thanks a lot. Now, these quotes, let's have a look. Fred Vasseur, I haven't actually read these quotes yet, or what he's particularly on about, but Ferrari team principal Fred Vasseur has been saying that he believes Mercedes are sleeping and will wake up soon, which I can't disagree with. But I'm going to read these quotes for the first time with you guys live. I just saw the headline. I was like, well, Fred normally says what's on his mind, so we might get a decent quote. If not, this could be boring. But he says, if you look at the first part of the race, I think we're closer to Red Bull than we were to Aston Martin. But it is race one, and I don't think we have to draw any conclusions. I think that Mercedes will wake up soon, but we don't know what will happen next week. Next week will be a different story in Jeddah. It's a different tarmac, and after that race, we'll have a better picture of the season. So, I mean, that quote didn't have much in it, but it's saying to me that Ferrari, and actually I've seen similar quotes from Horner, they're thinking that the pack might be moved around a little bit in Jeddah because it's so different to Bahrain. And while I think we're going to see Red Bull drive away at the front, I don't see any other result, and I don't think anyone else does. I think it's possible we might have a much closer race behind them because just because both Mercedes and Ferrari and Red Bull have pretty much said as much. It's so different, and then the teams will have a better picture of what's going on for the season. Because if you look at what Bahrain does and the type of tarmac there, and it's really abrasive and things like that, now you go into Jeddah that's super quick and a different type of tarmac, and it requires different things. I think looking at the mini sectors from Bahrain, I honestly think the Red Bull is going to win by an insane amount of time. And I actually think, unless they bring significant upgrades and changes, I think Mercedes are going to have a terrible weekend. I really do. Because what Mercedes have been saying about their car is that they're pretty good in a straight line now. But they lose a lot of time in medium and high-speed corners. They're just not generating the downforce. So unless they've changed something fundamentally between Bahrain and Jeddah, I think Mercedes fans are in for a world of pain. And the mini sectors showed that the Ferraris were fastest in a straight line on the fast bits, but the Red Bulls were unbelievable in the medium and high-speed corners in Bahrain. Very, very quick. Fernando Alonso in the Aston Martin wasn't far behind. So I think it could be a really painful weekend in Bahrain for Mercedes fans. And I know you guys won't want to hear that, but that's what all the logic is saying. Look, we might get to Jeddah and we might see a new floor, new side pods, new rear, new front on the Mercedes. Who knows? But it's going to be an interesting thing in Jeddah. And I think actually both Christian Horner and what Fred Vasseur has said is right. Coming out of Jeddah, we'll have a much clearer picture of what the season's going to be doing. But honestly, I don't see anything other than a Red Bull flying to the front and pulling away there. And I'd love your opinions on that. Of course, next week we'll do, the watch-alongs, and we'll do the race preview and stuff. But yeah, let me know what you think of that, guys. Now, title story, Toto Wolff. And I've got two articles here, which I'm going to sort of marry together a little bit here. I don't know how much of this will be repeated news, but some of these quotes I've not actually read yet. I've not actually read yet. Well, painful if you're not a Red Bull fan. Fantastic if you're a Red Bull fan. He said to media, it's extremely difficult to catch such an advantage to Red Bull, but it's what we need to do. We have no choice. I'm not sure the budget cap really gives you constraints in the position where we are, because we need to just decide which direction we're going to go in and put everything behind it. I don't think we're constrained by the budget cap. But we're not going to develop two side-by-side cars. But we are going to develop one car. We will decide in the next days which car that will be. So it had been sort of suggested that they had a car that was sat there, or rather an entirely different car that was sat there. Now, we need to get the timelines right here, because people will be like, I told you, Rich. I told you that they'd be doing this and blah, blah, blah. Right. Let's get the timelines right. So Mike Elliott in Bahrain said, well, let's say before Bahrain, Ted Kravitz said that Mercedes had a plan B. I said, thank you, Captain Obvious. This is Formula One. Mike Elliott said, there would be and is an evolution of the current car being made already, and it will be on the car. It won't look like any other car. It will be a clear evolution of what they have already, right? So that's what they said. And now, as we get into this situation, this is after Bahrain. We've got Toto Wolff saying we're not going to develop two cars side by side, but we're going to develop one car, and we'll decide in the next days which car that will be. So it's that's the situation, that after Bahrain, in the week, probably in this week that we've, well, actually, definitely in this week that we've just had, we've had the rumours of James Allison. That's for next year's car. Every bit of understanding I've got is that if you're a Mercedes fan, the potential of James Allison coming back is rumour, and it would be for next year's car, not this year's car. So that is everything I've read, and I read between the lines. I don't read it and jump to my own conclusions. Every report says rumour. Every report says next year's car. Nothing says that James Allison is coming back to fix this year's car, and I don't think they can do that. And get him on board, get him up to speed, and get him in and fully up and going. Now, in the last days, we've had the James Allison rumour, which I think is a good rumour. I think that's a good thing for Mercedes. But also them saying that this week that we've just had is when they're going to decide what concept they run forward with. So there was no plan B car. Now, will we see it change? It's difficult. George saying Mercedes need to realise their concept doesn't work. I mean, it's a tough one for me. It is a tough one for me because I can't say. It'd be very, I think from my position, it would be very lazy of me to say it doesn't work for Mercedes or it can't work for Mercedes. I would have to believe the same as Ferrari, because they're different to the Red Bull as well. Aston Martin are different to everyone as well. Like the Aston car looks different to everyone, apart from the rear being quite Mercedes, obviously. You have to think that these teams have got, especially a team like Mercedes, have got a significant body of data which is telling them this is the right way forward. I suspect this week they've had conversations and they will have put some resource behind maybe an Aston Martin concept, maybe a Red Bull concept, maybe even a Ferrari one. And we'll come back to the Ferrari one in a moment. And they'll have had internal meetings where they're saying, right, this is the data we have for our car. This is what we think about Red Bull. This is what we think about Ferrari. This is what we think about Aston Martin. And then now they're deciding, right, let's go the Red Bull route, let's go the Ferrari route, and so on and so forth. The stopwatch doesn't, we'll come back to that. Now, I said we'd come back to the Ferrari concept because we've seen Mercedes specifically, but also a couple of other teams, create those sort of dishes on the engine cover. You can call them whatever you want, but that are like the side pods of the Ferrari because it reduces drag. And I thought that was a really interesting detail, that it adds no weight. It's just body shaping on the car. And I thought it was really interesting because they've clearly looked at other cars, and what they decided to take was something off a Ferrari. And if you look on the Aston Martin, that's got a little bit of it as well, which I thought was just an interesting observation, that out of the cars, really, people have nodded at the Ferrari from the other top runners. Whereas the Aston Martin, their side pods are somewhat similar to Alpine's of last season, but I'd have to look at those in more detail. Now, saying the stopwatch doesn't lie, I'm in agreement with you. I'm in agreement with you, George. But again, what I would say is we know, because they've said it, that Mercedes hit their internal targets, and they'll have had those targets and so on. But you can say that a concept has pace, and the data shows it has pace without unlocking it yet. Like all data can point towards it because you've got the numbers from the research. And I think part of the problem is, Red Bull have said this, that they couldn't look in any detail at any of the other concepts to find out the benefits of those. And I know that might sound silly, but it's because Red Bull are aware that Ferrari might have their concept, but they might just not be making it work right. Or Mercedes, they might be sat on a gold mine of pace. They just can't get the balance working with the platform for whatever reason. And Adrian Newey was saying all that Red Bull could do was basically take a look at it and go, that's interesting, I'd not thought of that, and then move on. And while I agree that right now you can say the stopwatch doesn't lie, you have to look at it and go, okay, well, they must have internal data. What's media waffle? Which bit media waffle? They must internally have gone, this is the right route still. Like, if Mercedes didn't believe in their concept and have the data to back it up, it would look like a Red Bull this season, the same as Ferrari. They would have, like, God, if Mercedes ever had a reason to completely change the car, it'd have been halfway through last season, wouldn't it? It'd have been halfway through last season, and they could have gone, right, no more for 2022, 2023. Let's just look at what Red Bull have done and let's get that concept. Now, look, I'm not saying that sometime in this season we don't see a completely transformed Mercedes. Maybe. The only thing I ever took exception to was Ted Kravitz being a Captain Obvious in saying Mercedes might have a plan B that might look like a Red Bull or a Ferrari. Like, so might Alpine, so might Aston Martin. Like, it's just so obvious to say. Like saying they have the data that says they have a quick car. No, I mean, look, I don't see it. I think the fact that they've come out with the car that they've got, George, shows it's not media waffle. Like, a company or corporation or whatever you want to call them, the size of Mercedes, doesn't put their belief in a concept like that so fully unless it's data-driven, you know? And I believe even still, I think they're scratching heads at Mercedes. Well, look, this is the problem you've got here. Mercedes have said that they hit their performance targets. That's the issue Mercedes have got. Internally, using CFD and things like this, they hit their performance targets for the car. As they went to Bahrain for testing, in their mind's eye, they had hit very strict and what they thought very hard to reach performance targets. The problem Mercedes had was Red Bull and Aston Martin did too, and Ferrari did too. Everyone else did too. And the targets which Mercedes had set internally appear to have been actually quite conservative, even though they thought they were quite strict, you know? There we are. George says, I also think it doesn't help with them losing a lot of key staff as well. I've said this a lot, George, that Mercedes have lost staff to Ferrari, to Aston Martin, and to Red Bull. Lots of staff. Whether it's been to Red Bull powertrains, whether it's been to Red Bull proper or other teams, or to Williams even. Mercedes have lost a lot of their structure of what they had throughout their title-winning seasons, which is, it shouldn't be overlooked, and it's a reason why Aston Martin are doing so well. I've been screaming about Aston Martin and their potential for months, since halfway through last season. I was saying it. Aston Martin are coming, because they were recruiting correctly. They were getting people off the gardening leave halfway through last season, and it was obvious it was on its way. But you have to have the right people as well as the facilities and stuff. Keith saying, so they have a few directions. They can develop the existing car and will decide after Jeddah, but won't start from scratch. I think, from what I understand, this week it's already been decided, Keith. From what I understand, they have decided this week what direction they're going to go in. Now, we are going to see an evolution of what they have, and Mike Elliott says it's still going to look like this car. So we're going to see another, I guess, zero-pod evolution, because that's already been in the works. There's massive lead time, and for those people that don't know, you can't just say, I want a Red Bull front wing and it's ready a day later. It takes weeks, if not months, to get to that point, right? It's not like F1 Manager 22, where you can just click and you've developed one. It takes ages, right? And so there's an evolution of that coming. Now, will we see halfway through the season, 2/3 of the way through the season, a different Mercedes, a different looking Mercedes that's got different engine cover, different side pods? Maybe. Not sure. Jury's still out on that one. Yeah, Aston Martin has the Mercedes engine, yeah. I don't think Mercedes is a sinking ship, no. I just think they need to get hold of what they're doing. And that's really it. It's just the way it is. It's just the way it is, isn't it? If Toto wants a front wing, he gets a front wing. Yeah. But there we have it, guys. There's your dose of so Mercedes staying with the same car. Well, I mean, I've just told you everything and all my opinion and every bit of input. There you go, guys. I almost feel sometimes that these shows could go on for the full hour, but if people want to chat, I'll stay on longer. Mercedes staying with the same car, that we don't know, but the decision has been made internally. What direction of development? Now, that's the other question. What's the timeline? Now, will Mercedes be pushing a timeline to have a new development direction car racing this season, or will they already be looking at, right, that's the direction we're going to go in, look at 2024? Now, a lot of people will say they can't write off this season, which I agree with, but what will they do? If bodywork changes, it has to go along with the floor, of course. They need to change now or never. Well, I mean, the now or never, like, even if you're saying now or never, you've got, 4 months before anything happens? You know, if it's a B spec, do you think they'll go straight to the back of the grid? Well, this is the reality. This is the reality, right, as well, right, which I think Mercedes fans need to get their head around, right? And people might not like this. Mercedes fans are screaming for them to change their car, right? Red Bull have had 18 months on that car. Mercedes have decided this week what they're going to do. So from now, whatever Mercedes have decided now, they're 18 months behind Red Bull. 18 months of development behind Red Bull. So with what Gled just said, do you think they'll go straight to the back of the grid? They've got to be very, very, very sure that what they're doing is the right thing. And this is the reason why it's not an easy choice, because it's not a video game, it's real life. You can't just go, let's copy the Red Bull and it's going to work. Like, there's a whole thinking behind it, you know. And it's not as easy as I see a lot of people on social media. Mercedes need to drop it. It's not as easy as that. It really isn't. Unless, of course, they build a scale model, put it in the wind tunnel and go, oh, okay, now we know why we should have done this. But I'm pretty sure they'll have done it. With the B-Spec, it will go faster. Unlike this concept, I think it hit their targets. The concept hit the targets. This concept hit the targets. And you can't say that, Andrew. Like, you can't say the B-Spec will go faster based on you hope it's like a Red Bull. Like, you can't just say that, because that's not how it works. They can't just do it. I think they changed concept. They build for 24 and see the change start at mid to last third of the season. They couldn't run it at the lower ride heights last year. And it's, look, I'm just saying, I'm not like, look, I could be wrong. I'm just a fan like you guys. I just decided to make a YouTube channel and have this conversation because I absolutely love doing this every day. Andrew could be right. They could come to Jeddah with a B-Spec car and be on pole by 3 seconds. They could be. I don't know any more than you guys. I just bring the news to you, and we have opinions and different opinions, you know. The The concept they have now was supposed to be a second a lap quicker than anything else, and they put it on track and it wasn't. Well, there you go, Gled. That's proof, isn't it? That's proof. And like George said earlier, the stopwatch doesn't lie. But that points to another issue, doesn't it? We said about correlation between data in the Winterland CFD and data from the track. Everything in their data gathering showed that Mercedes was lightning fast, but it isn't. And are they still struggling as to why it isn't? I think they're just confused. They know it's draggy, but, you know, everytheverything they've ever said is that it's... Look, I wanted it to be a fast car because it was so different. You know, same with Ferrari. I want it because it's so different. To me, the Red Bull looks so conventional. And this isn't a Red Bull hating thing. I wanted the weird car to do well because it's weird, right? But, yeah, it's a curious one, this whole Mercedes thing. Because I don't see them catching 0.6 of a second a lap unless they really do unlock something that they've been looking for the last year and a bit. You know? Has there been an update on Charles's car after the race? Yeah, it was electric, so he's getting an engine penalty already because he's had 2 control units already and you're only allowed 2 for the season, from what I read. But are they... I've never seen... The problem for Mercedes as well, another problem for Mercedes is they were off in qualifying. I've seen some Mercedes fans say if they'd have done the second run in qualifying, they'd have been a lot closer. I don't believe that. I'm not sure why Mercedes fans think that. I don't believe there would be, and I think that's another reason they did one run. I don't think they'd have been any closer than they ended up being. Whereas the Ferrari was close to the Red Bulls, which makes you think there is something to be unlocked in the Ferrari, but what you're seeing from the Mercedes is what you're seeing. Like, the Mercedes is where it's at. And that's a difficult thing as well, you know. From what I'm seeing, there is no airflow around the side of the car to push the car to the floor. I'm no AirTech guy, but this year is all up. Where are you seeing that, Andrew? I haven't seen any of that reported. I wanted the walrus nose. I remember that, dude. Yeah. Maybe got 2/10, but yeah, they're not getting 6/10 back, are they, Gled? You know, and I think that's where, look, they have to unlock something fundamental in that car. Yeah, well, yeah, every year is about downforce. I don't know. I mainly want Mercedes to catch up because I'd like a title fight. But when you've got Max Verstappen's engineer radioing him saying, okay, plus 0.7 on the Delta, there is no race. Look, even as a Red Bull fan, that's sad for the sport. In the first race of the season, when the driver in the lead is being told there is no race, you can go plus 0.7 per lap. He's chilling 0.75 of a second a lap and being told there isn't a race. Look, I can't help it. Even if I was a Red Bull fan or a Max Verstappen fan, you know, that's not fun. That's not fun. It just isn't. And it's not fun. People will point towards Mercedes dominance, fine. People will point towards Michael Schumacher dominance, fine. But even in those cases, it's not a fun thing. It's not a fun thing. It's weird because the rear end of the Aston is basically same as the Merc. So is it the front of the car that's the problem? It's just overall balance, Glad. They're just generally not creating enough downforce. They're just generally not creating enough downforce around the entire platform. So when they're going through the medium and high speed corners, the entire car doesn't have, they just don't have enough downforce at all. Andrew's saying side pods, after saying he's not an aerodynamicist. But, look, who knows? I don't know. And yes, we might get side pods on a Mercedes. But there we are. There we are. Wouldn't it be nice? Wouldn't it be great if it maybe we should all just go and maybe we should all go work for Mercedes, because we all know the issue. We'll just walk in and go side pods. We'll just walk in and say side pods. Schumacher and Vettel bit dominated, and didn't we moan about it? Exactly, Keith. Exactly, dude. The traction the Red Bull gets is immense. They smashed the traction zones and mini sector thing. Yep, they did. They did, mate. They did. And it's pretty unbelievable, isn't it? Yeah, fans definitely know how to design. We do. Side pods, mate. Side pods. But we'll see. And of course, I'll bring you news as soon as we have any to share on these. Please do make sure you've hit that like on the stream. You may have to close the chat to do so, but it really helps with the YouTube algorithms so that YouTube knows that people want this content. So please do hit that like. And if you are new to the stream, please do hit that subscribe button down below. Just a small content creator trying to make a way in it. There needs to be something that disadvantaged Red Bull style because of what happened in the 2021 to the Mercedes floor. We know how to do it because we're all Captain Hindsight. Yeah, the FIA will find a way to slam Red Bull. Well, we'll see on these, won't we? We'll see on these, won't we? But that is the end of today's TSK F1 news. I've gone on for a long time here, longer than usual, because I thought we were having a good old chat. But we're just talking about Mercedes and Red Bull, aren't we? Now, and yeah, what is it? Friday today? Is it Friday? It is Friday. Bloody hell. I've gone through the week. I didn't even realise. I've just been sat here working. Didn't even realise. So, I will maybe put some content up over the weekend. We'll have to see, guys. But I will be live Monday, first thing, with TSK F1 news. So please do make sure you've hit that subscribe button down below. And do consider becoming a member, guys, for exclusive content. It really does help keep the lights on here at TSK F1 headquarters, otherwise known as my house. Thank you very much, guys, and I will see you on Monday, if not before. Thanks a lot, guys. Bye-bye.